Rose lay there, eyes half closed, her body melting under the intoxication and heat. Gavin sat beside her, his eyes never leaving Rose's face. Sweat rolled down her smooth white forehead and disappeared into the corner of her hair. Rose's breath was gentle, mixed in the air with a sweet and seductive scent that made Gavin's heart flutter. Welcome to our channel. If you love engaging and emotional love stories, then come to our channel. Here, we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. In today's video, we would like to present to you a story called Mother's Secret, narrated by Jane. Please watch. In the quiet suburbs, a modern 3-story house with a shiny black iron gate and a neatly trimmed garden always stands out from the street. This is the home of a family of 3, Mr. Gavin, Ms. Rose, and their 17-year-old son, Henry. But no matter how beautiful the house looks on the outside, there are always invisible gaps and emotions that are difficult to put into words. The sound of an expensive car engine rumbles in front of the house and then quickly stops. Mr. Gavin gets out of the car with a shiny leather suitcase, a neat suit hugging his strong body, a serious face like it was carved from stone. As a successful businessman, he often goes on business trips abroad, leaving Rose and Henry to fend for themselves with their daily lives. "You're leaving again?" Rose leaned against the door, trying to keep her voice calm, but unable to hide the sadness on her face. "Yeah, this time it'll probably be a few weeks. The project in Singapore ran into trouble. I have to go there to handle it," Gavin said as he dragged his suitcase into the car, not paying much attention to the disappointment in his wife's eyes. He always thought that money was enough to make up for everything, including love. "You're always just about work," Rose sighed, but in the end she remained silent, just watching him leave like so many times before. The iron gate closed, leaving a heavy silence in the space. Rose walked back into the house and looked at herself in the large mirror in the bedroom. Her skin was still white and smooth, with few wrinkles compared to her age of nearly 45. Her jet black hair was neatly tied up, highlighting the sharp features of her face. Many people said that Rose did not seem to age at all, but only became more and more attractive over time. For Rose, the age of puberty was not only about changing needs, but also a time when she wanted to live more for herself. Office work was no longer just a source of income, but a place where she sought freedom and affirmed her self-worth. Every morning, Rose chose a new outfit. She never wore the same dress during the week, and that made her colleagues both admire and envy. She opened the large wardrobe, her hand gently gliding through the neatly arranged dresses. Today, she chose a tight emerald-coloured dress with elegant nude high heels. She knew she was beautiful, and that confidence helped her stand out from the crowd. The eyes of her male colleagues at work sometimes made her feel that she was still attractive, but those were just fleeting moments, unable to make up for the loneliness in her family life. While his mother was busy getting ready for the day, Henry lay on his bed, scrolling through his phone with a focused gaze. He opened a website that he knew he shouldn't be looking at, but his teenage curiosity couldn't stop. "Just a little look. No one will know," Henry muttered, his eyes flashing with amusement. The phone screen reflected his young but curious and stubborn face. Rose's footsteps echoed in the hallway. Henry quickly turned off the phone and pushed it under the pillow, his heart pounding. "Henry, come down for breakfast," Rose called from the kitchen door. "I'll be right down, Mum," Henry replied loudly, trying to make his voice as normal as possible. He stood up, looked at himself in the mirror, and smiled softly. He was tall, his face showing the lines of adolescence. His black hair was neatly cut, but deep in his eyes was the confusion of a teenager struggling to figure out himself. Breakfast was laid out on the table with the usual fare: toast, fried eggs, and a glass of cold orange juice. Rose sat down, watching her son devour his food with concern. The changes in Henry's personality had made her feel more distant from him than ever. "Henry, how are you doing with your studies? Is there anything you need help with?" Rose asked, trying to break the silence. "It's nothing, Mom. I can take care of myself," Henry replied without looking up, his eyes still glued to the phone screen next to his plate of food. Rose frowned but didn't ask any more questions. She knew her son was growing up and needed his own space, but the feeling of helplessness at not being able to understand him made her feel depressed. After breakfast, Henry put his backpack on his shoulder and walked out of the house. On the way to school, his eyes kept following the girls in his class. Each time he looked, his imagination became more and more fertile. He wanted to learn more, experience more, but he didn't know how to talk about those things with anyone, especially his mother. Rose stood by the window, watching her son's figure disappear around the corner. She wondered how long it had been since she had actually talked to Henry. How long it had been since this family had only lived together but didn't really understand each other. Outside, the sun was high, shining brightly on the spacious but cold house. The new day had begun, but Rose and Henry both felt like they were living in separate worlds, worlds that they didn't know if they would ever meet. Stepping into the office building, Rose immediately became the center of attention. The jade pencil skirt hugged her slim body, and the high heels accentuated her elegant yet alluring figure. Every step she took was a perfect combination of confidence and style, making admiring eyes unable to leave. Colleagues, especially men, could not hide their admiration as Rose passed by. Soft compliments rang out behind her. "Sister Rose is really getting more and more beautiful. I wonder how she keeps her figure and always stands out." Rose heard it, but she just smiled slightly. These compliments had become a part of her life, like an invisible layer covering the emptiness and loneliness that she did not want anyone to see. In the office, the atmosphere was bustling as everyone prepared for a new project. Rose put her bag on the table and opened her laptop when a young, mischievous voice rang out from behind. "Sister Rose is so pretty today. No one in this office dares to compete with you." She turned her head and met the bright eyes of Gavin, a 25-year-old new employee with a handsome face and a mischievous smile. He stood there with his arms crossed in front of his chest as if waiting for Rose's reaction. Rose adjusted her slightly curly hair on her shoulder, her eyes shining with a bit of amusement. "You're so good at saying this. You'll definitely be very successful in the future." Gavin shrugged, his smile becoming more sly. "It's a pity I was born a little later than you, otherwise—" Rose laughed, a gentle but meaningful smile. That sentence should have been just a simple joke, but the way he said it, the way his eyes sparkled when looking at her, made Rose feel something different. He was unlike the other men in the office, not overly flirtatious, not pushy. Gavin had a youthful naturalness, mixed with a touch of daring, as if he wanted to both conquer and explore Rose as a mystery. That afternoon, the two of them sat down to finish the project report. The sounds of typing on the keyboard, mixed with the sound of flipping through documents, made the space come alive. At first, the distance between Rose and Gavin was still polite, but little by little, she didn't know when that distance gradually narrowed. Every time Gavin bent down to hand over a document or moved the mouse on the screen, she could feel the warmth from his arm, and sometimes they accidentally touched each other. Rose felt her heart beat faster, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. At first she thought it was just an accident, but then she realized that those moments weren't completely random. When she finished, Gavin leaned back in his chair and smiled comfortably. "Rose, I finished earlier than expected. Should I buy you a cup of coffee?" Rose hesitated for a moment. This invitation was not simply a polite gesture. In Gavin's eyes, she felt the waiting and expectation. "Yeah, a little is fine," Rose nodded, trying to keep her voice calm. The two of them entered a small coffee shop near the office building. The space inside was cozy with soft yellow lights and melodious music playing from a small speaker. Gavin politely pulled out a chair for Rose to sit down and gently ordered 2 cups of coffee. "Do you like this place? It's not too crowded but comfortable enough." He smiled, his eyes never leaving Rose. She nodded slightly, feeling light-hearted after a long day of work. Although a bit shy at first, the atmosphere quickly became open. Stories about work and personal life flowed naturally like flowing water. "Rose always looks full of energy. I don't understand how you work so well and always stay so cheerful," Gavin said, while taking a sip of coffee, his eyes filled with admiration. Rose laughed, gently stirring her cup of coffee. "It's not always like that. There are times when I'm very tired, but I'm used to it. Work is my passion." The coffee shop was still warm and quiet, the soft yellow light shining down, making the space seem strangely peaceful. After a few polite questions, Gavin suddenly fell silent. His eyes became distant. Rose noticed that and asked gently, "Do you seem to be thinking about something?" Gavin smiled faintly, his eyes filled with sadness. "Actually, there are some things I haven't told anyone at this company, but I think if I can, I want to share them with you." Rose nodded slightly, listening patiently and calmly, although she was suddenly curious about what this young man would confide in. "I had a relationship before. She and I had known each other for more than 3 years and were about to get married. But then everything changed when she met a rich man. He had money, power, and of course there were things that I couldn't give. In the end, she left me and followed that person," Gavin said sadly, his eyes unable to hide his regret. Rose was silent for a moment to let Gavin's story sink in before answering. She felt touched, a little sympathetic for the young man sitting in front of her. At 25, Gavin had it all: handsome looks, confidence and talent. But behind that, he carried the pain of betrayal, something that no one could see through his strong appearance. "I'm sorry to hear this. Love is so unpredictable, isn't it? Sometimes people think they've found the right person, but it turns out to be an illusion," Rose said, in a warm, sympathetic voice. Gavin smiled slightly, but that smile still couldn't hide the sadness in his eyes. "I admire your family so much. Your husband is successful. Your son is a good student. The whole family must be very happy. I think if you had a family like that, you wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore." Rose fell silent when she heard Gavin say that. She looked down at the cup of coffee in front of her, the heat from it rising up hazily like the tangled thoughts in her heart. After a moment of silence, she decided to open up, even just a little. "Thank you for the compliment, but actually my family is normal, not as perfect as you think. My husband is always on business trips, rarely at home. My son is growing up, and the distance between mother and son is getting farther and farther. Sometimes I feel lonely living in a big house. Full family meals or evenings chatting together are now just memories," Rose said in a low voice, clearly feeling the emptiness that she had hidden for a long time. Gavin looked at Rose with sympathy. "You understand. Sometimes people have all the material things, but lack the most important thing: love and closeness." The two continued to talk, sharing their secrets, and from there a deep understanding gradually formed between them. Rose no longer felt the age gap was too big, and Gavin also felt that Rose was not only a charming woman on the outside, but also a deep, sensitive person with real emotions. From that day on, when they got home, they often texted each other on the phone. On a Saturday evening, the company held a party to celebrate high sales. This was an important event, and Rose knew she needed to change her style to suit the party. Today was not a working day, and she was no longer a busy woman with her daily work. Rose chose for herself a seductive red evening gown, a tight-fitting yet elegant design. The dress had off-shoulders to reveal her slim shoulders and a high slit to accentuate her long, slender legs. Paired with metallic high heels, her every step became graceful and attractive. Her black hair was neatly tied up, leaving a few strands of hair hanging down gently to frame her elegant face. Entering the party room, Rose immediately attracted all eyes, not only because of her gorgeous appearance, but also because of the confidence and natural charm she exuded. Her male colleagues could not take their eyes off her, but there was only one particular gaze that made her feel a little confused. Gavin. He stood from afar, looking at Rose with eyes of admiration and admiration. Rose at the party today was not just a colleague, but was like a proud, charming, and gorgeous flower that made it difficult for others to touch her. "Sister Rose, you really look beautiful today." Gavin stepped closer, whispering as they stood next to each other at the party. "Thank you. Everyone looks beautiful today, not just you." Rose smiled back, but her heart was a little stirred when she felt Gavin's eyes on her. The party lasted. Everyone raised their glasses to celebrate and laughed loudly. Rose immersed herself in the jubilant atmosphere of the party without any hesitation. She laughed and talked to everyone in a friendly manner, making anyone nearby feel the comfort and positive energy spreading without any distance or reserve. Rose and her colleagues raised their glasses, one after another, as if they wanted to hold on to every happy, complete moment. Then when it came to the singing part, Rose did not hesitate to step onto the stage, taking the microphone with confidence. The lines that rang out from her were not just musical notes, but also fragments of memories of a vibrant youth. Her voice was deep, sometimes hoarse from the beer, but it contained a passion that seemed to have never faded. "Rose sings really well. You only look like you're 30 years old," a colleague joked, causing Rose to only smile back in delight. Gavin still silently followed Rose without taking his eyes off her. Every time Rose smiled, he felt an indescribable feeling well up in his heart, not just admiration, but also a desire to get closer. The party ended at 11:30 p.m. Everyone started to leave, but Rose had drunk too much and lay down on the chair, tired. Gavin looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to her, so he decided to step closer. "Rose, let me take you home. You can't go home alone." Rose looked at him. Her eyes were hazy from the beer, but she could still see the concern in Gavin's eyes. She nodded gently, unable to refuse. Gavin called a taxi, but on the way home he realised he didn't know Rose's address. In his confusion, he decided to take her to his apartment, a small but cosy apartment. When the taxi stopped in front of the small apartment building, Gavin carefully picked Rose up in his arms and brought her into his apartment. The apartment wasn't big, only about 70 square meters, but it was neat and cozy. He put Rose on the sofa, carefully took off her shoes, and gently wiped her face with a wet towel. Rose mumbled something in her drunkenness, sometimes laughing, sometimes sighing softly. Living alone is so lonely. Gavin paused and looked at the woman in front of him. He felt the weakness and hurt hidden deep inside her. A feeling of pity and a bit of indescribable excitement rose in his heart. Gavin walked out to the living room, took a light blanket to cover Rose, but when he was about to turn away, Rose gently grabbed his hand. Her dreamy eyes looked at him pleadingly. "Don't go. Stay with me." Gavin stood still when he heard that sentence. His eyes widened in surprise. Rose, in her drunkenness, still held his hand tightly, as if he left, she would fall into a bottomless void. "Stay. I don't need you to earn too much money. I just need you," Rose mumbled. Her dreamy eyes seemed to be talking to herself in a dream. Her gentle voice mixed with sadness and longing that only someone who had been alone for a long time could understand. That sentence hit Gavin's heart straight. He knew those words weren't meant for him, but for her absent husband. But why did they make him feel so choked up? In front of him was a woman who seemed strong and perfect in the eyes of others. But now she was weak and pitifully lonely. Rose lay there, her eyes half closed, her body melting under the intoxication and the overwhelming heat. Gavin sat beside her, his eyes never leaving Rose's face. Sweat rolled down her smooth white forehead and disappeared into the corner of her hair. Rose's breath gently mixed with the air. The faint scent that was both sweet and seductive made Gavin's heart waver. "So hot," Rose whispered, her voice as small as a breeze, forcing Gavin to lean closer to hear clearly. At that moment, Rose's warm breath blew across his hand, causing his body to tremble slightly, as if an electric current was spreading throughout his body. Rose moved slightly, her slender hands accidentally touching his arm. "Let go. It's too hot." The words rang out softly, but seemed to awaken something deep within Gavin. Her hand touched the zipper on her side, gently pulling the fabric down, revealing her pale skin under the dim light. Everything seemed to blend into the intoxicating atmosphere, making his mind gradually become dreamy, unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. He reached out to lightly touch Rose's hand, as if to retain the last bit of consciousness, but Rose did not avoid it. Instead, her hand gently squeezed his hand, a gentle squeeze that made his heart surge with chaotic emotions. In that moment, Gavin leaned down, placing a soft kiss on her forehead, as if to dispel the heat that was burning him. The scent on Rose's skin lingered, warm and gentle, making his mind disappear. He did not know what he was looking for: comfort, a moment to escape reality, or just the warmth of a kindred spirit in the long night. His kisses slowly stopped at Rose's lips and went further, like someone lost in a storm of emotions, unable to turn back. The dim yellow light of the night lamp filled the room with darkness, leaving only halos of light on their skin. The space in the apartment seemed to freeze. Only the rapid breathing of two bodies mixed together remained. Rose lay on the soft sofa, her back pressed against every line of the mattress, feeling every trace of warmth from Gavin's body pressing down. Rose's hands tightened around Gavin's shoulders, pulling her closer, as if afraid that if she let go, everything would disappear in this dark night. Their lips found each other instinctively, both strong and eager, lips touching lips, teeth touching teeth, not gentle at all. Their breaths were hot, ragged and urgent, their heartbeats pounding in their chests. Rose pushed Gavin deeper into the sofa, her arms slipping into the edge of his shirt, pulling quickly as if wanting to erase all the layers of separation. Rose did not resist. Instead, she hugged Gavin's neck, pulling him deeper into her arms. Every movement became extremely powerful, as if this was the first and last time they could be together like this. No one knows how long they were passionately together last night, only remembering that after the burning touches and rapid breathing, both were exhausted. The alcohol gradually faded and they fell asleep in each other's arms on the soft sofa. The morning sunlight penetrated through the curtains. Rose stirred slightly and woke up. The slight pain in her body reminded her of what had just happened, intense, bold, and instinctive. But strangely, her heart was not confused. Instead, there was a feeling of warmth and peace. In the kitchen, Gavin had woken up early. The sound of stirring the pot of porridge rang out softly, simple but strangely thoughtful. When Rose walked in, he turned around and smiled gently. "Have some porridge to ease your fatigue." Rose silently looked at Gavin, feeling a warmth and gentleness behind the strong appearance last night. She smiled softly and whispered, "This is just between us, okay?" Gavin smiled back. "My secret, don't worry." From that day on, the messages between the two became more frequent and closer. Rose realized that she felt younger, her soul awakened after many years of silence. That night was not only a secret, but also a fire of rejuvenation that warmed her heart in a way she had never thought of. After that first sublime meeting, Rose and Gavin quickly fell into a whirlwind of intense emotions. They made more appointments to meet, each time like an escape from the suffocating reality. The afternoons became the precious time that both of them craved. Sometimes they went to Gavin's apartment. Sometimes they went to discreet hotels. Each time was a new discovery, both exciting and furtive. One day, when Rose and Gavin got out of a taxi parked in front of a hotel called Than Lich Hotel on the corner of the street, they did not know that Henry had seen them from afar. The boy had just returned from playing with his friends, and his eyes accidentally caught the image of his mother intimately holding hands with a young man. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes. No way. I must have seen wrongly, Henry thought to himself, but still tried to step closer to confirm. However, when he had time to move forward, his mother and the man had disappeared behind the hotel door. Doubt crept into Henry's mind, but in the end, Henry had to put it aside, thinking it was just a strange coincidence. One day in the middle of the week, after many meetings in strange places, Rose and Gavin decided to change the atmosphere. This time, Rose invited Gavin to her own house, where memories of her husband, which had faded over the years, were still present in every corner. This bold idea made both of them both excited and a little scared. The house was strangely quiet when Rose opened the door, the afternoon light filtering through the curtains and spreading softly on the floor. Rose's bedroom smelled faintly of wood and clean linen, but today the space felt different under Gavin's presence. Rose sat down on the edge of the bed, her eyes hesitant for a moment, but quickly erased by Gavin's longing gaze. He stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder gently but firmly. "Are you okay here?" Gavin whispered, as if to check one last time. Rose just nodded slightly, eyes heavy with emotion, then pulled Gavin down beside him. Her son is studying at night and just came home. The bed used to be where she and her husband slept. Shared happy days now become the setting for another story. A story of betrayal and the desire to find oneself in the midst of loss. Ladies and gentlemen, what will happen next in the story? It will definitely be very dramatic and surprising. Jane hopes you will watch part 2 to feel the appeal of the story. And now, my love, goodbye and see you in the next video.